I think if you're watching it from a canon perspective, what you're just seeing on screen, it probably seemed like the most important thing on planet Earth and the goal and the driving force and all of those things. And I think behind the scenes, the reality was maybe that was a little less about being the champion that has the actual title versus being what I knew I could be the top of the card. However that card shakes out. I know I was promised nothing in terms of other than contractually the money that I was being offered as far as signing a new contract, but there were no must-haves or anything of that nature. It was really more in here what I wanted, and then there's a very prominent individual backstage and on screen who's been on your stage before. I'm not going to say his name, but I hold him in high regards. He was the first person who presented me with the terminology, the task. He said, "This is what the task is, and we will do everything we can to accomplish the task." And I could check in and say, "Hey, did we succeed in the task? Were we unable to succeed? Whatever it may be." But it kind of willed itself into existence, just like so many different things. And uh, my career, your career, a lot of go-getters and people who want it and people who dream out in the open. It willed itself into existence where it became a must-have.
It kind of struck me, obviously you were the first name from AEW to WWE, the big jump when it happened. I'm just kind of curious overall from Vince McMahon, Triple H to the boys in the back, was there any sort of reaction of you're coming from somewhere else, even though you had been there before, or was it all kind of like, this is great that you're coming here?
Hmm. I uh I think one of the things that was really nice was when I came back. Yeah, if you're just watching the television shows, the weekly shows, or that little Wednesday night war action that was going on, you might think there's hard feelings, or you might think there's a kind of a contrarian attitude, but truthfully, most of the boys, if not all of them, were very appreciative and grateful for what me and Matt, Nick, and Kenny and everyone had done. Because it helped the bottom line in the industry in a sense of contracts started coming out, really high dollar contracts started coming out. Wrestling went from, 7-figure guys to there was the ability for some guys to make 8 figures, and still looking at our global penetration, that's probably still less than what we could ultimately achieve in terms of how prominent wrestling and sports entertainment is globally. But that's a whole nother a whole other story. I'm very happy with everything, but that was nice. There was a lot of gratitude, a lot of people, producers and talent, just telling me thank you and not really thinking about going to battle with each other as we had been doing for so long, as much as they were just happy to have me on the team and as part of the culture and to bring what little bit of my own energy into the WWE culture and see if it spreads or see if it helps, whatever it may be. I got a really great compliment from Finn Balor. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing. I won't get too specific with it, but he was really appreciative of what I brought, not just on screen, but what I brought to the backstage environment. And, we can pat ourselves on the back so much as wrestlers, but it's really nice when you hear that from somebody who's, an absolute legend like he is, and someone who's made me tons of money without even realizing he made me tons of money in terms of his creation of the Bullet Club. Um, but yeah, no, everyone was very on board. I think Hunter and I took a little longer in a sense because at the time, Vince and Bruce were in charge of creative, and this is before Hunter had taken over as head of creative. But I feel like we had kind of primed the pump and got ourselves in a position for when that did happen. I was really just happy to take the field, and he calls the plays, and we used quarterback as the analogy, or as I do, and I've been genuinely such a great don't I don't want to screw it up. Such a great relationship in a sense of, here's what I need from you. Here's what I'm asking of you. Uh, go get it. And if you don't, I'll tell you didn't get it. So everyone, open arms. I'm trying to think if there was somebody who wasn't, or if somebody was. Yeah, no, everyone. I think promo wise, some guys probably wanted to dive in a little bit more against me about, hey, here's where I've been. Where have you been? And that was totally fair game. They weren't wrong in wanting to do that. Seth cut a promo on me on Monday Night Raw talking about breaking the throne, and now I come back, and he was completely justified and in the right. So that was an area where I had to navigate and accept it and wear it.
And I do need to ask this question, but you've kind of from when you left AEW, you said I'm not going to talk about why I left, I'm not going to talk about what happened, and that was kind of the narrative for a long time. And you did an interview recently, and you'd kind of just said the ending was terrible, there's some squabbles, and that was kind of it. You didn't really say too
Yeah.
much, but it went everywhere, and obviously you know what
Yeah.
happens, you know the drill. I just kind of wondered kind of what the feedback has been like that from that for you, and also why you think that maybe you did reveal a little bit more of how you're feeling at this point.
You're specifically talking about the Chris Van Vliet
Yeah,
interview,
yeah.
right? Yeah, probably shared more than I should have. You know me and Kenny. You know very well that I'm a little gun shy now about interviews and everything of that nature, because I never want to upset a fan base, particularly a fan base of a place that I helped create and have a I mean a place in my heart forever. Um, a good way to put it, I guess, because yeah, I said things didn't, it was terrible, whatever, and it wrapped up. However, a good way to kind of look at it is when it comes to the management and luminary figures and people who were part of that time in my career with me, I don't necessarily have to like them, and they don't have to like me, but I will always love them, and I will always have a love for them because of what we did. It was really, I was sitting on a stage with you talking about potentially what could happen. I think we were in maybe Cork, Ireland, talking about potentially, and I knew that the ink was drying on the paper already. I knew what was about to happen, and it was just so exciting. And the original All In being like a genuine Woodstock for wrestling, this must be there event, and uh, James Musselwhite, James, right? And taking photos backstage and just documenting it all. And I'm so glad he did, because it's just a really great memory. And every now and then, if you catch me getting caught up in how it ended, that's just natural, whatever it may be. Best way I like to think of it is I don't have to like anybody from that situation, and that remains private, but I certainly have a love for everyone because of what we did.
And my last follow up on that before we move on is, obviously, you said you're not going to talk about it and all that. Is there any part of you that thinks, the mythology of this kind of becomes? I remember you said once that the ending's not very sexy from when
Yeah.
you left. Like it's not. People are probably thinking it's more exciting than it is. Is
Yeah.
there part of you that thinks that people, because they don't know, are just going to run away with it? Like, is there a temptation to kind of shut that down?
That's a really great question. I think perhaps people might have already run away with it. I remember when I told you that, I was like, yeah, it's not really that sexy of a story. I think I was more referencing that, Brandy and I had been offered new contracts. Brandy had a great deal with Tony, and I had a great deal with Tony, and Roads to the Top season 2 had been renewed. It was that. I feel like you'll hear some narratives online. I'm like, oh man, they're so far off. I think the temptation comes from maybe a fear of it getting away from the truth and reality, because it's so easy today just to have a blue check, say something, and nobody fact checks it. I think that's a little scary when you're in the public eye, no matter what public eye that might be. And I think the idea that as we grow older and share more and books are written and interviews like this and larger interviews, I have a daughter, and her legacy is my legacy, and my dad and my family, my brother is still being with the company. I just don't want my legacy to be in any way, gosh, I don't know if this is the best word about, I don't want elements that are fabricated or lied about becoming truth. And that's where the temptation is to speak up and say, no, 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 no. Here's what happened. But even so, when it takes root, sometimes people really need that to be the story. They just do, and they're not going to believe you, regardless. I'm fairly optimistic that everything with that will just really be a great story, you know, and maybe 10, 20 years when they talk about, you know, the revolution in the industry. I hope I get to be interviewed alongside everybody else and just share what a damn fun time it was and how it continues. One of the things about coming to WWE that was so exciting was like the revolution in terms of how the business is changing, what's happening. I could do that in WWE and under the Triple H era, or however we're looking at it. I'm even more allowed to be free and play my music how I'd like to play it. So yeah, that's an exciting thing. And to your point about temptation, and it's not a sexy story, and then my concerns when people try to put a spin on it who weren't there or who don't know, that's all stuff you can't avoid. You can't avoid. It's going to happen. And the good thing is many more inside the ropes interviews to come. So if
Yeah, we'll
no,
we'll get out of you eventually.
Yeah.
You know, when you came to WWE, it's one of those things where I think it's what have you done for me lately for fans? I
Yeah.
think, you know, what's the last thing you've done? And when you came to WWE, it's that 3-match series with Seth Rollins. That's the first thing you do there. How important was that Seth series to sort of set the tone as to what this Cody Rhodes run in WWE was going to be?
We'll look at WrestleMania 40 in a sense of, you know, Seth, the MVP of that event. And I think sometimes when you're the face of something, or when you are maybe its biggest cheerleader, and and the guy who's blowing the horn and waving the flag like Seth had been for WWE, probably as in terms of outspokenness more than anybody. Um, I think those matches, I don't think I realized how important they were at the time. I knew just the power of Seth Rollins. I had seen the greatest cash in of all time. The dude had a Hall of Fame career within 5 minutes of working there. I mean, he was just on fire. And I had his first live event in Kalamazoo. We had done a FCW show together. So we had these kind of little moments through history, the Shield versus the Rhodes brothers to get our jobs back. We had these little moments, not unlike when I'm in there with Roman. There just feels like this sense of, I wasn't in the Shield by no means, but there's this natural connection. I know personally for me, the matches were really do or die. They were really make it, you know, make or break for me, because I had just told the fans, hey, what's coming next is going to be better than what you've seen before. And they had seen some incredible stuff before. So that's the tall order. And I had a great opponent, an adversary in Seth Rollins, in a sense that we also probably don't agree about what I did and how I went about doing it. And to be there against WWE's biggest cheerleader and promoter, and someone who really put the WWE on his back at certain points in his career, I had to not just reach his level, I had to try and exceed his level. I think the matches are remembered better than maybe I remember them because of the third match, because of Hell in the Cell, because of the injury, and going forward and having a match. I don't think I realized how unprecedented that was until I've seen some of, you know, I tell people all the time, I won't watch it back. I don't have to watch it back. There's a new figure printed every day. There's like that story and the lore that came out of just ripping my chest to shreds, and then going through the match. It's another one. I've said this about a couple different matches, but I'd love to sit down with him and watch that one and just kind of relive the feeling of being in there and thinking I'm going to die. in the first 5 minutes, and then by the end of it, feeling like I was bulletproof. Just the series of emotions and adrenaline and everything. I mean, that's a song, man, adrenaline in the soul. But that third match, I think, puts a exclamation point on those, to the point where I don't know if people would want to see me and Seth wrestle again. Maybe they would. I'd love to do, he's such a great in-ring wrestler in addition to all the other things he is. If I had to go 60 minutes with anybody, I'd certainly like to test myself with somebody like him in an Iron Man setting. But again, I don't know if anybody wants to see another one. We really did good with the three we had.
Well, let's move on to, you win the 2023 Royal Rumble, you're going to WrestleMania to face Roman Reigns, and at the same time, Sami Zayn is experiencing this kind of popularity that is just kind of, huge. For you as a performer, what's the mindset of, like, because you're always someone who has listened to fans, listens to fans. Were you concerned that the support might be split?
I want to say no, but also in the back of my mind, maybe I was like neurotic over it in a sense, like, oh gosh, I'm coming back and I hope they're there for me. I know I often used to say what a great problem it was to have. You know, Sammy's doing so incredibly well and is so beloved. And then I had this wonderful connection that was just really starting to bloom with the WWE audience, and particularly perhaps its younger demographic. No, I don't think I was concerned. But I also said when it came to WrestleMania 40 and not WrestleMania 39 that I wasn't concerned about The Rock coming back. You know, I think sometimes I say I'm not concerned, and maybe it's just me being confident, if not being arrogant, in a sense that no, I can overcome anything. I do feel that way. I do. And the reason I feel like I can overcome anything, or if you say to me, hey, this guy's a better wrestler than you, I try to go out and prove that statement wrong. The reason I feel that way is because when I was younger in my career, that stuff did eat me up. You know, you wanted to get ahead of the other guys, and I feel like you were more, as a young man, young woman in the business, you were more inclined to stab somebody in the back and whatever it may take. And now, as I've gotten older, and particularly when the nonsense in my life went away, was Liberty being born. And I tell my students at the Nightmare Factory all the time, I say, you will be put in positions to stab somebody in the back. And just know you don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. But know that if you don't stab them in the back, you got to stab them in the front. And that's a competitive and fierce way of putting it, but it's an honest way of putting it. A thing about sports entertainment and pro wrestling, and the Chris Van Vliet interview, I don't know if I just screwed Chris's name up, but CVV. One thing that I noticed got a little bit of unique feedback was when I said, hey, if you don't want to be world champion, I don't understand you. And that's still where I'm at. That's what I mean about the competitive nature of it. It's just me. I mean, this business is filled with people who want to be this or don't want to be this. But for me, that's the ingredients. That's the flavor. That's the fever. I can tell when somebody has the fever. Somebody has the sickness to want to be the best they can possibly be and leave behind a beautiful legacy.
And when you talk about, your confidence and kind of willing, how you feel about stuff, going into WrestleMania 39, I think everybody thought, well, Cody's beating Roman. That's a given, right?
Yeah.
But when you find out that's not the case, how do you process that, and kind of what's your mindset at that point going forward?
Leaving WrestleMania 39 without the title.
Yeah.
Feel it was probably I just finished telling you how I say all the time, oh, I'm not concerned. That might be the most false I'm not concerned that I ever gave, because the amount of time that you have the people as a male wrestler, women's wrestler, as someone entering the ring, the amount of time you have their attention, you never know. You can't take it for granted. There were characters like The Undertaker and Hulk Hogan and Steve Austin who maintained the attention of the audience for years and years and years and years. John Cena, years and years and years. Randy Orton, years and years and years. You don't know if that's going to be you. if you can keep their attention that long, as confident, if not arrogant, whatever it may be, you don't know when it's going to go away. And I had a lot of really good people around me to kind of put it in my mind that, hey, the champion's not going to be around as much as you're around. You know, these live events and this weekly business that WWE puts on that sometimes we don't see because we're looking at the big picture, the target shows like a SummerSlam or WrestleMania. You will need to be their guy. You will need to be their champion. This will need to be your team. And I had a lot of people encourage that in terms of keeping an eye on those metrics, the shows with just you on them. How'd you do here? How'd you do there? Whatever it may be. So I think it went from being a false I'm not concerned to I really did own up to the idea of, hey, okay, I will do all I can to be the lead dog in WWE's most prolific era without this right here, without that. And I do think we accomplished that. I really think when people look at any type of run I've had, I hope they look at the 3 years, in total in terms of the 2-year story and everything that it might be. Who knows? Just because that was a really incredible time to be on top, but not be with the championship. And I don't think, I know your question was more in terms of how my mind was. I don't allow myself to really get rock bottom, because gosh, it'd be super irresponsible of me, to be rock bottom. As much as I have the fever and love this, and I mean, I eat, sleep, and breathe wrestling, but the thing I love the most is my wife and my daughter, and I don't help them at all by hitting rock bottom. And me being older when I had Liberty, or older than I guess most parents when they have kids, that means I got to continue to put in the time, because for sure, in terms of something that's in the back of my mind and a goal I have, is I want her to see me, and I want her to see me on top. So she needs to start getting older so I can do that.
The WrestleMania documentary came out. This kind of follows up. You might not be able to answer this, but I'll try anyway. The WrestleMania documentary comes out. We find out that Triple H, Hunter, tells you the day of the Royal Rumble, Rock's going to be coming back. This is what's happening. When you come out of that meeting and you're told you're winning the Rumble, but Rock might be coming back, what in your mind do you speak to anyone? Do you seek advice? Do you try and kind of process it? Because I imagine that's a lot to take in, with a short amount of time before you need to go out and perform.
Typically it would, the whole thing would be like you said, it would be private, and it would be kind of, I guess, an off limits subject. But because we did the documentary, and because that Hunter, Triple H, Paul, however we're referring to him, has told you that this is a possibility of that happening, and hey, you're gonna win every game, and you should be in the Super Bowl, but you might not be in the Super Bowl. The thing he told me, and he said on the documentary, was that nobody right now, till we figure things out, needs to know. And that was just a moment of man up. I don't know how else to do it. Man up, be an adult, grit your teeth, whatever it may. I'm sure I gritted my teeth the whole night, in terms of don't self-destruct, don't think about it, because you've got a 30-man Royal Rumble main event in a stadium in Tampa, Florida. I think it's quite amusing that this happened in Tampa. I've modeled so much of my career after Eddie Graham, who passed everything on to my father, for to be there for that. Maybe that was a good thing. Maybe there was a guardian angel involved. But I just said, I don't hit rock bottom. That was a very contemplative, blue, very private kind of weekend and few days that would follow, because I think I was more in shock, and then not just in shock, but okay, how do I overcome, and what steps, and and then as Triple H has pointed out, and I saw Brian Gewirtz say something about it. If people knew the real plan for me, they'd be even more angry. I can't share the real plan for you, but or the original plan, whichever, how we put it, the Rock plan, whatever it may be. That was going to be on my mind in terms of how do we make that work? How do we accomplish that? But again, really good team of people around me. That's where DDP hit me with the famous "whatever happens to you will be the best thing that ever happens to you" line. And I thought, that's insane. That's madness. I don't have a clue what you're talking about. And he was right. He was right, including if it had gone the other way. He would have been right, because the audience was what mattered. And I got to be really quiet, and I got to say nothing, and I got to watch the fire grow. And I realized maybe I had every right to be confident. Maybe I had every right to not be concerned. But yeah, definitely let's say it was a Wheatley vodka sponsored few days. Oh, I don't know if that's a good way, I don't know if that's a good way to put it, but Wheatley is a sponsor of WWE. So yeah, no, it was a rough few days.
Might be the most shameless plug I've ever heard. But
well, I mean, they're also like in the behind the scenes documentary, incorrectly, there's a bottle of vodka sitting next to me while I'm on the bus. That is for the shoots that we do. I was not just consuming straight up. I don't want to ruin the lore for anybody, but I wasn't just drinking this bottle of vodka, drowning my sorrows. That wasn't the case. It looks really great in the shot. That wasn't the case, though.
I do also want to mention, because you mentioned Brian Gewirtz, and he had said on Busted Open that, when you passed the torch to The Rock for the match in February, that, I can't remember I don't have the exact verbiage in front of me. The gist of it was, you could have looked a bit happier about the passing of it. When you sort of heard that, is there a point there or not?
He might have a point. He might, only because I didn't think of myself. The moment was so real. I guess I didn't think of myself in a performance sense of you're not smiling or you are smiling. And then the final boss had whispered something in my ear that was actually really kind and nice. And I did smile. And then I think not so much about my face. The thing I remember about it is I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to get out of there. I did want them to have their moment. I wanted to be gone. And I didn't want people to linger on me. And it seems like I would never shade our production team, especially with what Brian Fathom and Lee Fitting and everyone's doing. I think they might have spent a little too much time focused on me in the first place. And not focused on that potential matchup, because I don't think I offered up. Brian probably has a point. I don't think I offered up the best faces for what that should have been. I certainly wasn't trying to be Boo Boo Face. Boo Boo Face is famous in the industry when something's up and you can tell upon somebody's entrance. But maybe I was like the #1 case of it of all time. Who knows? I did not think they would spend so much time on me. I did not think they would be looking at me while I was in the aisle. I just wanted to just get back to my bus. I actually didn't go through Gorilla. I walked around it. I didn't want to see anybody. I sprinted, got on my bus, and just locked the door.
I mean, unfortunately, you could do a whole interview from that moment till WrestleMania 40, but we don't have you for that much longer. So 3 more questions. In terms of WrestleMania 40, luckily the fans were so behind you.
Well, hey, was it as bad as Bret Hart? Was it as bad as Bret Hart, this thing?
No, it was not as bad as WrestleMania 9.
Because that to me, okay, how did you feel about, as a kid, watching that WrestleMania? Were you actually mad? Did you care? Because as a kid,
I'm the worst guy to ask, because I loved Hogan winning the title. So
right. So as a kid, I just thought, oh, cool. Oh, cool. I don't know if I saw the bigger ramifications of it. Who knows? But then I ended up kind of living it in my own life. But yeah, so maybe it wasn't as bad as this.
In terms of WrestleMania 40, you get to win the title, you get to the tag match with The Rock. You talk about Bret Hart. He did the double shot at WrestleMania 10. You did the double shot at WrestleMania 40. So when you think of WrestleMania 40 weekend, the favorite memory, what is the favorite memory?
Ooh, favorite memory from WrestleMania 40? The best thing that happened at WrestleMania 40 in terms of like you're asking me and in my heart, like there's an answer that would sound obvious, and that's the answer you should probably give. But the truth of it is, and I don't think I even articulated this to this individual, was Charles Robinson, legendary WWE official and Little Nate, all these things. Charles Robinson handing me the title. Um, Even now, I'm just like tensing up thinking about it. Charles Robinson handing me the title was the happiest memory I could possibly have. This we talked about at the beginning of this interview in terms of willing something into existence. It doesn't always happen. It's not always a happy ending, and I wasn't going to get the opportunity to wrestle him again, really, if we didn't get it done. And Charles handing me the title, I think also because Charles is the senior official in terms of in charge of officials, still leading the ring crew, still to have that moment with him. Maybe he does know. I don't think he might be the type that we don't have to say anything to each other, but that was incredibly special, that moment with Charles. On a personal note, I think the thing I love the most about the weekend was I've said the Hall of Fame before, where I kind of realized, oh man, I'm they're really making they're making a big deal of me here. But I got to have I bring my family to a lot of events, and now they bring themselves. We've got a whole group chat, and there's like 30 different people in this rotation of who will go in the suite, who won't. But I got to do a dinner with them that I didn't want to do because I was so stressed out and I was so behind on time and sleep. And then when I got there, it was really great that I got to sit with them and see everybody, and guys like Sean Spears, who I wish had been in the ring with me, some of my friends from AEW, of course, who came. And then we got to have that same group backstage right before I did the press conference, and we just took a big picture. You can probably find it online. Berkeley, my cousin, his wife Victoria, who works in talent relations. We just got to have this photo that really is great, and to have little Brody, um, again, tensing up thinking about it, but that's it might be a big deal to him that he was in the ring for that, and he probably will tell you it is. I think it was a bigger deal for me. I think it was. My family is not always flesh and blood. They're not. I'm actually kind of hard on some of the members of my family that are flesh and blood, but it's experience, it's loyalty, and it's kind of a teamwork amongst each other. But I got to be there with my family, my real family, and share that moment.
In your mind, is SmackDown big enough for Cody Rhodes, the guy who's carrying this era, and Roman Reigns in his big babyface run, the two of you together in one brand? Do you see that as a potential?
I have a really answer you might expect. I'm not concerned. Um, I do think I think it was I don't know how to pronounce his name. The really really complimentary guy from Wrestle Purist. I think who had put out this like how's this going to coexist? There's plenty of real estate on SmackDown, especially SmackDown, who's had a wonderful partnership with Fox and now moving on to USA. There's plenty of real estate for um, a returning Roman Reigns and myself, hopefully still as WWE champion. And if anything, and I don't know if it's on his mind, I certainly am not opposed to it. But again, perhaps the biggest match WWE could have right now is one more time with Roman Reigns and myself, and I'm sure that's on someone's mind. I know it's something that's been on my mind, but nah. I mean that with no arrogance, just confidence and just positivity that I am not concerned.
And the last thing is, you're heading towards probably WrestleMania 41 with The Rock. When you think about that, when those plans are in motion, or you're in the ring with them the night after WrestleMania 40, in the back of your mind, do you ever think about all the hard graft or work that you did in leaving and going everywhere and working everywhere and
Yeah.
working with everybody? Like, does that come into your mind? Because to get from all that to now it's you and The Rock in a kind of WrestleMania main event situation potentially is, you probably couldn't dream it any bigger as a outcome.
Well, I think when it comes to WrestleMania 41 in Vegas, you could tell me today that I'm wrestling this person or I'm wrestling that person, and it will be for this, whatever it may be. But because of my experience with WrestleMania 40, I would never believe anything until I'm standing in the ring in that moment. When it comes to the potential of another WrestleMania main event, which is full disclosure, I've been asked this over and over again. What do you want? What's next? What's the new story? Whatever it may be. What's the new task? For me, the new task is getting another WrestleMania main event, walking out last on Sunday. And again, I want my daughter to see it. I do. I don't know why that element of legacy kind of scratches on me, but it does. I want her to see it. With all that said, the way to get there is by doing all the things that I had done in terms of the hard work you see on the camera and the hard work you see off the camera, particularly something that WWE has fully adopted for me, and I am blessed that their security team allows me to do it, is how I engage with fans at the end of the night. And yeah, if I have to take a little bit of a fine or eat, have a pay deduction on my check because we ran overtime and we passed the curfew at the building, I'm totally fine with it, because that connection I have with the fans is the type of thing that brought me to the dance. So it's important in my mind, I never get away from any of those pieces. That's just one specific example, but all the things I did. For example, this interview with you. I got a list of interviews going into SummerSlam that I'm supposed to do, and part of me, for a brief moment, was like, do we need? And I kind of caught myself and instantly stopped. And this is part of what got me to the dance. And I can never not play and remember my fundamentals and not keep that in my, in my tool chest. So looking at WrestleMania 41, looking at the potential, whoever it is, of the main event, I will do everything I possibly can in terms of work and not being outworked, and running until everyone else drops, and driving that car until everyone else is in the rear view to get there. And I know others are thinking the same thing. I know the ones specifically that actually mean it, and I know they're thinking the same thing. And that formula is not a formula for negativity. That's a formula for a positive, successful company that's currently living its best life in terms of dollars and cents, particularly heading into the Netflix era. So those out there who are watching this, who work with me, who are thinking the exact same thing, absolutely bring it on. I am not concerned, because this is what we do.
Perfect way to end it.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, man.
Thank you very much.
Can I give a full disclosure on this is a repeat interview?
Sure, yeah.
So I only say this because I want you, people from inside the ropes, to know Kenny is I'm not talking about Kenny personally. From a professional standpoint, Kenny is a very valuable human being and member of wrestling journalism and sports entertainment coverage, and just our makeup as a wrestling fandom and family, because we did this interview before. And I might have been a little wacky, a little off the charts. I mean that in terms of what I was saying, not in terms of anything else. And Kenny was kind enough to say, "Hey, let's redo it." And that's a good man right there. So for those who read the magazine, who go to the shows, all the inside the rope stuff, please know Kenny has your best interest as the fan, and the best interest of the talent as well. And that's just, I mean, that's Bill Apter level thinking. I'm very grateful for you. So thank you.